with Ms. Gilmore being present, I call this meeting to order. Prior to, I guess, starting the meeting, so to speak, I'm going to reference Article 4, Section B of the bylaws, specifically the first sentence where it says the chairperson shall preside over all board meetings at which they are present. I understand that this particular meeting comes with great expectation. However, this will not become a toxic verbal abuse session. If there's something that is constructive to add to our work here, then by all means. But unlike other aspects of local government here, that's just not something that I'm going to allow to be engaged in. Two of our members have already encountered that. So with that said, the first item is the agenda approval.
Isn't it the call to order, Chair Brown, about or did you recognize everybody being present here?
Yes, I've already recognized and I've already done the call to order.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is the agenda approval.
Okay. Unless somebody else has something to say, I would like to make an amendment to the agenda. I would like to move items 10 and 11, the public comment and the board discussion over the intersection, I think, of the City Council and the Charlottesville Police Department and the PCRB up to items 4 and 5, and then move everything down to and even to perhaps put public comment at 2 minutes in order to allow those on the call to participate if they want to make comments. I see that we have about 24 attendees today, which seems, I don't know, maybe Brian can check on that, but it seems to be quite a few, have registered via the webinar to be able to make public comment possibly. So that's my motion to move items 10 and 11 up to item 4 and 5 with a decrease in public comment from 3 minutes to 2 minutes.
I have a question, if I could, regarding Ms. Carpenter. Would you expand on item 11? I'm not sure what that item refers to or what the purpose of that item is.
I don't know. I didn't make up the agenda with what the thought process was on that, but it seems like there's issues in discussion open, and I imagine it would be Mr. Chair Brown could expound on that.
Sure, I could expound on that. Earlier, I guess this month, I had received an email from Ms. Carpenter outlining that specifically to be added to the agenda. So that was taken out of the email verbatim and added to the agenda itself. Now, my consideration in placing that at the end of the agenda is the fact that nobody here is ignorant. We expect some significant discussion from that. However, we do have a lot of board work that has to be taken care of prior to that. And as opposed to derailing the work of the board, we should get that out of the way first and then move forward with obviously the anticipated discussion.
All right. But I do have a motion before the board, and I don't know if there's going to be a second on that motion or not.
So Ms. Carpenter, I know we discussed this issue yesterday or the day before. I guess you've changed your mind. I mean, I think you were of Bellamy's point of view at that point. Not that you can't, but I'm just saying.
There you go. Not that I can't.
And
Absolutely.
Also, I think we can expeditiously get through our business, which is police oversight, and then at the end, open up the floor for public comments.
So am I hearing that there is no second to that motion? To move?
That appears correct.
All righty then.
Okay. So the question of the agenda approval is still on the table. Do we have any objections, any additional objections?
I move that we accept the agenda as written.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Robinson, could you pull the board?
Sure. Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
No.
Dr. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
And Ms. Gilmore, I believe, is still on the line.
Ms. Gilmore, are you, where's Mr. Wheeler? Is there a way to, I guess, help her get off mute by chance?
I've clicked the ask to unmute button.
Ms. Gilmore? Okay, I guess we can we count that as an abstention, Mr. Seltzer?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It may be that Ms. Gilmore will want to record a vote later, and you can certainly accept the vote at that time.
Okay, very well. We will record that as an abstention from now. The next item on the agenda is an adoption of the minutes. I don't have any issues with the minutes myself. I don't know if there are any other objections.
These are the minutes from the last two meetings, which includes the one that my computer ate at one point. So,
Yes, yes, sir.
you know, so now we're caught up.
Yes. Okay. Seeing as no objections, is there a motion to adopt?
So
I move
move.
to adopt the minutes.
Is there, okay. Ms. Robinson, could you
Yes.
pull the board?
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Dr. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
Mr. Watson?
Yes.
And I'll call Ms. Gilmore again. Ms. Gilmore?
Okay, so we'll,
Mr. Wheeler, is there something that Ms. Gilmore can do to get off mute?
Can somebody send Ms. Gilmore a text?
yeah, I will.
I think I might have her number. Okay, you got it?
Yeah.
Sometimes people can't get text though when they're on their phone, but hopefully she can.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the status of complaints. So as of 2021, we've received 19 complaints at the PCRB. 15 of those are closed. Since our last meeting, 4 of those came in. One was a black male that would like to sue the CPD. Another was for lack of training, lack of communication, and not being for the people. Another was a black female for professionalism. And then the final was a female for lack of training. Are there any questions regarding those?
What's the status of those currently, Mr. Chair, in terms of?
The 4 that are open, those are still open. They happened within the time frame of our last meeting and our current meeting.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. Mr.
Can we assume that under the new management, we'll continue to receive complaints and that we will continue to, receive the summaries of the dispositions of the complaints?
Yeah, there hasn't been any interruption, since that's taken place. Lieutenant Gordon, Sergeant Wade have been, diligent about continuing to send those over.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Are there any additional questions? Okay, seeing as none, the next up
Chair Brown, I did get a message that Ms. Gilmore is having issues with, I guess, hardware, and she needs some assistance. So I don't know if how we can, bridge that so that she can be a participant tonight, because she definitely wants to be very much involved with our meeting tonight. I don't know if Brian can get someone on the line. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if there's a potential for having some other staff to get with her and find out what's going on, or what. How can we get her on the line?
I'm not certain, but I will leave that to Mr. Wheeler.
I think what I'll try to do is just directly call her, but we're going to be heading into public comment here shortly, so I'm going to need to be managing that. So, but between myself and Max Robinson, we can try to put a phone call in and see if we can figure out a workaround. The way to unmute is *6, but I believe she's been pretty experienced using her phone for these meetings, so I think she knows that. But we'll reach out to her and see if we can help.
Thank you so much.
The next item on the agenda is the financial status report. Mr. Vice Chair, did you want to cover that, or do you want me to cover that?
I'm sorry, this was the executive director.
No. The financial status report.
Oh, no, I was hoping that Ms. Marshall would be able to give us somewhat more detailed information about our finances, which is something I requested of her.
Okay.
Because there was some confusion about how much was originally allocated for us over what period.
Yeah.
And how much we had spent on our lawyer.
Sure.
I'm not sure whether she's available to respond at this time, but I hope she can.
There she is.
Yes, Vice Chair and Chair Brown, I'm available. Shall I proceed? Is that okay?
Yes, Manager Marshall.
All right. And thank you. On the 30th of August, we did have a budget document pulled that I sent to both the chairman and vice chairman for their review. The current budget and SAP did not reflect this fiscal year's payments for your attorney. Ms. Chrissy Hamill in budget is working to make sure that we get that reflected appropriately. And then I will make sure that I will check tomorrow with SAP. Forgive me, I'm still learning how to use SAP. It is not a natural system. I miss QuickBooks a whole lot. Yeah. But I will re-pull that document and again send it to both you, Vice Chair Mendez, and you, Chairman Brown, sure, for your review. So yes, there have been some attorney's fees that have come in. They are paid. Your attorneys are happy. It just is not appropriate in SAP. Sure. But I believe that is only maybe around $6,000 at this point for this fiscal year. For
council?
Yes, sir.
I have more information I could add on that.
Sure.
Okay. So the bills that came across, I guess my view, were March, April, June, and July. The total amount for all 4 months was $17,280, which gave an average of $4,320. Added in a forecast for January, February, May, and August, and so we would be averaging, roughly about just under 35 grand for 2021. Obviously, we spent some capital in 2020 as well, but for this year, it's writing just under 35 grand. And then from the budget doc that was given, it looks like 200 grand. Is that right? Yes, 200 grand, $200,000 was allocated for other expenses. That was a general catch-all. So you would take the 35 and subtract it from the 200, and that would be kind of where we are roughly at this point.
And Chairman, I don't know if this will be good news. Remember, the city is on a July to June fiscal year. So for FY22, only that $6,000 has come through. Everything else was paid out of your previous fiscal year. So you have more money in the bank than if we were calendar year. So I just wanted to make sure you all know you all should still be very good for your utilization with your outside counsel for this fiscal year. And we will be monitoring it. And thank you so much for the additional information so we can make some forecasts. So I can make sure that I am asking for an appropriate amount for fiscal year 23 on your behalf.
Okay, very well. Thank you, Manager Marshall.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if you could continue to send us those monthly reports, that's great.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Not a problem.
Thanks a lot.
The next item on the agenda.
I got something. Oh, that's all right. One of the things I was just thinking about as we forecast what the rest of our year is going to look like as far as our budget, we probably want to keep in mind looking for opportunities to take more classes from NACOL. And we may or may not need as many classes as we took last year, but we definitely want to make sure we carve out some funding if available. It sounds like it's going to be available. I mean, who knows what the future will bring, but so that we can get that continuing education. That's it.
Yeah, and of course, the executive director's salary will kick in presumably starting at the end of September, and so we'll need to keep tabs, on
about that.
The total expenditures.
Could we ask a question? You're talking about budget, and I get it and everything. Work with budgets a lot, but by the October meeting, could we have an actual document, PDF or Word doc or something that's outlining what you want for FY23 or what we want for FY23 and the expenditures, just so I can have a side by side, because I don't have any documentation to back up all this good information that you're giving about our expenses and what we're anticipating to do. But it would be nice to have a document that would outline that, if at all possible.
We can certainly, as far as I know, transmit the monthly budget reports to the entire board. I think that's absolutely appropriate. And so when we get a printout at the end of September, we can do that.
Thank you very much.
And I wanted to make clear, so the 200,000 is exclusive of the executive director's salary and benefits. So just wanted to make that clear. Or the 200,000+ as Manager Marshall has indicated. Yes. So
it looks like Ms. Gilmore has arrived.
Yes. Ms. Gilmore?
Yes.
Were you able to hear the discussion on agenda approval and adoption of minutes?
Yes.
Okay. So we did take a vote on those. To approve the agenda, there was a 4-1 vote. Oh, I don't. Okay. To approve the agenda, there was a 4-1 vote. For the adoption of the minutes, there was a 5-0 vote, or a unanimous vote. And I just want to, I guess, get in here and have Ms. Robinson record your vote for those, if that's okay.
Okay.
All right. Ms. Robinson?
Yes. For the adoption of the agenda, Ms. Gilmore, your vote?
You talking about what Nancy put on the table? You want me to vote on that?
No, this is to approve the agenda yes, ma'am.
Ms. Gilmore, my motion died for lack of a second in reference to adjusting the agenda. So they were voting on the agenda as presented in our documentation for tonight.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
And then for the adoption of the minutes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is the update on the executive director process. And for that, I will turn that over to Mr. Mendez.
Yeah, what I thought I would do is just sort of give a quick overview of the qualifications of our new executive director, and then turn it over to Jeff and James so that they can provide their opinions, having interviewed him. Basically, at the I'm sure you all know, at their meeting on Monday night, Tuesday night, the City Council approved Hansel Aguilar's contract to begin toward the end of September to be our executive director. Mr. Aguilar has a bachelor's degree from Rutgers in criminal justice and sociology from Rutgers. Yay, maybe he's a Jersey boy. That'd be great. And a doctor of philosophy in sociology from George Mason University. He has a long history of community involvement in police oversight. He has been a member of the Police Civilian Review Panel in Fairfax County for almost 5 years. Prior to that, he was a police misconduct investigator for the government of the District of Columbia for 2.5 years. And so it sounds that on paper, he looks like an extremely qualified candidate. Now, Jeff and James, you have anything to add?
James, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say you pretty much hit the nail on the head. One of the things that I think is gonna help us is the fact that he has been part of a CRB in the past. Because as you all know, unless you've been sort of in these chairs in this spot, you know, it's hard to really understand. So, and as you all probably heard, he came down here about 3 years ago and they did some training with NACOL. So he's got a little bit of familiarity, you know, with Charlottesville and some of the various maybe ideas and issues that we've been through over the last few years. And it seems like his whole life has been pretty much dedicated to social justice. And he, you know, as Bill said, he worked in DC and did quite a bit of investigating in the district. So, you know, seems like a really good fit. And it's also done a lot too in the DC area, connecting with the Latinx community. So he's got a lot of really positive qualities in his bag. Yep.
I would only add too that he is also a former police officer, so he understands policing from that perspective. You know, that was just another feather in his cap in terms of qualifications. I wonder if Ms. Marshall would add anything to what the comments, because she was also intimately involved. In fact, she shepherded the process and did a remarkable job. So tip of the hat to Ms. Marshall. But I don't know if you would add anything or not, Ashley.
Sure, thank you so much. I don't have much more to add other than that I hope that the PCRB will well serve by now having multiple staff members here to provide you all with assistance and guidance. I will still continue to be available to you all for any needs or concerns that you have, but it was a very competitive process, and it was not necessarily an easy decision because you all did have the benefit of having many qualified candidates. And so that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing actually, because that shows that there were people who were certainly interested in joining you all and helping to ensure that there's transparency here in Charlottesville.
I think it's wonderful that we finally have gotten through this process, and I appreciate the caretaking of ED tasks that both of our board chairs have done over the course of the last year and a half, and now it's lovely to hear that we'll have that extra support right there starting at the end of the month and jumping in and ready to go, it sounds like.
So we definitely want to welcome Mr. Aguilar here and thank him for doing so. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Mr. Wheeler, if you would like to poll the audience for public comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you'd like to address the Police Civilian Review Board, please click the raise hand icon in the Zoom webinar. If you're watching us on Boxcast or Facebook, you'll need to register in the Zoom webinar to participate. Just go to charlottesville.gov/Zoom to get that link. We have 2 hands raised right now. We have 31 people in the audience. First person is Don Gathers. Don, you're on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes. And you'll have to unmute. All right, I'm going to come back to Mr. Gathers in just a minute. Next up is Harold Foley. Harold, you're on with the PCRB. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. First of all, I want to say to James and Jeff, the reason why we brought you into the meeting with the People's Coalition, we wanted to talk to you privately and make it sort of like we didn't want to bring anything publicly to you two, right? So the problem is, Mr. Brown, your chairman, agreed with the PBA, the Police Benevolent Association. From the beginning, so you have to know the history, from the beginning of the concept of the Police Civilian Review Board, the PBA has been trying to sink it. The PBA does not want to see oversight, right? The PBA rather have this board burned down than Mr. Brown, then you run it. So don't sit up there thinking that you have done something so well to get the chief fired, because you have said that numerous times on the Jerry Miller show. What we want, and it's the citizens of Charlottesville, is an oversight board that does not include the police. The board is created, or was created, in, I think it was October or November of 2017, for the citizens to be able to complain about officers' misconduct. And I'm gonna say it again, it was created for civilians to complain about misconduct by the police. So what you have done, Chairman Brown, you have synced everything that is possible that was built for years of trying to get oversight. City Council is not going to trust this board. The civilians is now kind of confused about this board. And I'm gonna be honest with you. Me, the People's Coalition, didn't see eye to eye with Chief Brackney. But we rather see a system that's gonna be there to disrupt misconduct in terms of police coming into my neighborhoods, Black and brown and poor neighborhoods, and mistreating us, victimizing us. So, Mr. Brown, you said you had an experience. That was one experience. It's many Black and brown folks who having experience after experience after experience after experience. So I didn't come over here to fight. I just come here to try to educate y'all about the severity of what has happened. Y'all played in the hand of the PBA. Now, to get real meaningful oversight, you'll see. The PBA is going to come after you all. Thank you, and y'all have a great day.
Thank you. Next, I'll try Don Gathers again. Don, you're back on with the PCRB. How is your microphone? All right, Mr. Gathers may have stepped away. I'm going to go ahead and lower his hand, and then he can raise it again if he is back at the computer. Next up is Katrina Turner. Katrina, you're on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'm one of the initial members of the Civilian Review Board. And the training that we got from NACO, even when Fairfax came to speak with us, they never told us to include the police into this board. That was not, they never trained us that way. And I'd like to know if you all, were told through the training that was paid for by the city, to go and feel sympathy for the same people who have wronged so many citizens in this community. We fought for this PCRB because of the actions of 2017, because of the way the police stood down and did nothing that day. But look at all the chaos going. We needed a board that the people can come to when they are done wrong by the police. We don't need a board that's going to include the police making complaints on this board. Now, I think it's 19 complaints that I think I heard at the beginning. How do you think these people that are going to file complaints with the CRB, how do you think they're going to feel if the police, the same people who are harming them, are able to file a complaint in the same board? How is that? This is not what we fought for. The PBA came after us, as Mr. Foley said. Okay, I was threatened with arrest. Chief Brackney even blamed myself and Miss Parker for the police leaving the police department. We went through pure hell. And no, I am not a fan of Chief Brackney. I have complaints on her myself. But the way it was done, and because of a survey about the police and how they were treated, and all of a sudden she's fired, what about the people that you all are on this board for? The people should always come first, because this is what we fought so hard to form this board for. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sarah Burke. And Mr. Gathers, if you're listening, please raise your hand again if you'd like to talk. Sarah, you're on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
Thanks, Brian. I want to say that I'm an investigator with more than 13 years of experience. And I look back at Mr. Bellamy's statement, and that was made when you knew that there were CPD command climate surveys in existence that you had not seen. You had seen one of 70 surveys, yet you made a conclusory statement about police leadership without holding all of the evidence. And I'd like to know if this kind of investigation comports with how you envision your investigations going moving forward. Because due process matters and transparency matters. Yet the statement was made after what you, Mr. Brown, termed a year of ongoing conversations with police officers, which you never made the public aware of. There was no public hearing prior to the statement, and to my knowledge, there was no due process for the leadership who you condemned to say their piece. So this is a process that is not reliable. nor does it inspire confidence. So I want to be clear. I think it's important to speak to all stakeholders, including the police. But what's not appropriate is to make conclusory statements about any city personnel without providing due process or prioritizing the police department's internal to you discussion complaints over the complaints of the public. So I fear that you have jeopardized your own desire for investigative authority by using your platform to make this personal statement. And you all submitted a really great ordinance that a lot of us worked really hard for. And I'm worried that this investigative matter with this statement might have ruined that. I also want to note that the PBA survey was created by the PBA, which represents officers alleged to have conducted misconduct. Mr. Rawls himself has stated that they have no cap for how much they will spend representing an officer who has, quote, made a mistake. He stated that they've spent $1.5 million defending a cop alleged of wrongdoing, all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. And this is the group who created the survey that you relied on and did not wait for the survey from the city, which actually has different outcomes stated in that survey. So the statement was premature. It was based on an incomplete investigation, and it ruined your credibility. I'll also note that in that same survey, only 11.3% of officer respondents said that they think a well-run PCRB would improve the current process. They are not on your side. The PBA wants to see the chief gone. They succeeded. They don't want to see you exist. They didn't want to see us exist. Yet here you are aligning yourself with their motives. I think that what you've done is further emboldened brazen racist policing. And I believe that the statement was inappropriate and it ruined the trust with the public. And I also know that it was followed by what I consider to be disturbing and inaccurate social media posts. I think that Mr. Bellamy should be removed from the board. Mr. Brown, excuse me.
Thank you. Don Gathers has his hand back up. Don, can you hear us?
Yes, sorry, we've been battling some technical issues. I apologize.
That's okay. You sound good now. Go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I too am a member of the initially impaneled Civilian Review Board. And sadly, I have to say that I believe that the recent actions, as well as some previous actions, have done a discredit to that initial board and the reason for its formation in the first place. The board is not or should not be in the business of city politics. It was impaneled for a specific reason, to deal with manners of improper policing. As far as whether chiefs should or should not retain their jobs, that is not what the CRB should be dealing with. Should be dealing with matters of misconduct by the police officers. And I believe that the city already had, many citizens, already had an issue of distrust with the police and the policing and the way that much of it was being done. And now we have created a climate of distrust in the CRB as well. So I urge you, I encourage you to please be mindful of what the climate that has now been created, that steps be taken to rectify that. And I also really have a question about a statement that was made earlier about there being 4 core members of the group. I would like to know exactly what in the world that meant and who those 4 core members are and who the members are that are not considered core members. That was could very well be a very disastrous statement. If nothing else, it furthered a divide that obviously already exists on the board, and we're not functioning properly. We're at the point that now that all the work that was done by the initial board, it's like Congress, where the Democrats come in and lay the groundwork and do all the good work, and then Republicans come in and just toss it out the window. I mean, it's very harmful to the community and to the citizens of that community the things that have been done and have been said recently. And I encourage you that you all, as well as City Council, review these actions and take the proper steps that would be, or steps that would be proper to rectify those. So thank you all. I look forward to hearing the remainder of the meeting.
Thank you. Next up is Ange Khan. Ange, you're on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. First, I want to ask, are you all answering questions during this comment section or session? Hello?
No, I don't believe we are. This is just for the public to comment at this point.
Right. But so then when will you be responding to the public's questions? Like, what is the point of having a comment section where you're not able to reply, especially now? That's my question. I mean, you really need to be responding. This is not a situation where you just listen to people and take in what they're talking about and their concerns, and then look at the blank screen. Like, you should be responding to people. So anyway, since I'm not going to get my question asked, I'm still going to ask it, and hopefully you'll think about this. But I'm a bit concerned that the PCRB is packed with a police apologist and those who are willing to have backdoor conversations with the police. How are those in the community who have worked hard on forming the CRB, and those that believe that the CRB could be a way of police accountability, trust your process and decision making, and they're filing complaints? That's my question. We need that question answered. And now is not the time to say we're not going to answer any questions. It's not the time. And
it looks like we lost Ange Khan. If she comes back, she had about a minute left on the clock. If anyone else would like to get in line, please click the raise hand icon in the meantime. Next up is Amalia Garcia Pretelt. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. You're on with the PCRB and you've got 3 minutes.
You did pronounce that correctly. Thank you. Hi, my name is Amalia Garcia. I've lived in Charlottesville for 20 years. I don't normally come to local government meetings. This is my first time, and I think it's because I believe that we as a community deserve answers about the firing of Chief Brackney and the relationship between this review board and the PBA, given that the PBA is being run by someone who refuses to recognize the existence of racist policing. Those who oppose reform in this community often minimize our concerns by calling us a vocal minority. And I feel it is pertinent to remind our local leadership that we are not in the minority. The police are the minority in this community. And it is concerning to me that we are valuing their concerns over the well-being of people in this community. I really hope that you all will take steps to restore community trust. I completely agree that there should be some sort of forum for you all to answer our questions. I think more than anything, people are confused, and there has been a lack of communication. And I really hope that there will be some concrete steps taken to address the concerns of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ange Khan, I see you're back, or you were briefly. Nope, now she's gone again. All right, we'll move on to Andrew Shelton. Andrew, you're on with the PCRB, and you've got 3 minutes.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to add my voice to the chorus that believes that we deserve some answers about the firing of Chief Brackney and the role that the PCRB and Mr. Brown may have played in that entire situation. It is very difficult to see why we should have any faith in this body going forward when it will easily allow itself to be manipulated and injected into city politics in such a way. And I think if you're not willing to answer questions in this forum, that it would be very wise to decide for yourself where that would be acceptable, because we need answers. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ange Khan, you're back on, and you had about a minute left before we lost you. Did you have anything
yeah,
further?
sorry. Yeah, I was having technical difficulties. No, I just wanted to say that Bellamy Brown should step down from the CRB, the PCRB as chairman. There's absolutely no faith in any of the processes going forward, any of the policies that you're going to try to make, any of the decision making. It's not going to, there's no trust there from the community. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any new hands. If anyone else would like to get in line.
All right, Mr. Wheeler, I believe that we do have some additional business to.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Dr. Frazier.
If I could, a point of personal privilege.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Thank you. I would just like to address some of the negative feedback and misconceptions that I've received from certain members of the community, that my comments at the last meeting, which were in support of a need for change of leadership at CPD, somehow meant that I, as a member of the PCRB, was, as I was accused of, being in the pocket of the PBA. And that supporting a change in leadership at CPD, I somehow am not.
Mr. Frazier, Dr. Frazier, would this better be served under item 9? That's part of what I wanted to discuss.
Excuse me, Member Carpenter.
I'm just asking, could this be under the discussion?
Member
It's
Carpenter.
a point of personal privilege.
Personal privilege, all righty.
So as I was saying, and that by supporting a change in leadership, that I somehow am not committed to the mission of the PCRB. So let me be clear. I'm serving on the PCRB because I strongly believe in police accountability and equal and fair treatment of everyone in our city, regardless of creed, color, race, or income, and that commitment is unwavering. But let me add, accountability, in my view, also includes leadership in the department. But believe me when I say this, I am in no one's pocket, and no one group owns me, controls me, will bully me, or in my view, is the PCRB owned by any one group. There are multiple constituencies in this city, and we want to hear from all of them. That's my personal view. The problem of unequal policing in the Black community by police has gone on too long, and it needs to end. Full stop. There are many in our community who don't want a PCRB. They don't want PCRB with power. So consequently, we need all members of the community and all stakeholders to support our efforts if we're going to get a strong ordinance. But do not doubt that my commitment to addressing racist policing is unwavering. I agreed to this appointment back in February to the PCRB to help implement a strong ordinance, which I hope Council will approve. I want nothing more than a PCRB that corrects the problems in the city with biased and unfair policing, primarily in the Black and brown communities, and even if reasonable people disagree on how to get there. To those who believe otherwise, that is solely why I'm serving on this board. I have no other agenda. I will also say, to my knowledge, in terms of my own personal involvement, I had nothing to do with the firing of the chief other than stating publicly my view that we needed a change in leadership. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Frazier. Mr. Mendez, yes, go ahead, sir.
Well, I'm just noticing that more hands are shooting up, and I tend to agree with Nancy that.
Yes. Hello.
Ms. Gilmore, I'd love to hear. Can we hear from Ms. Gilmore?
No, Joy Johnson has her hand raised. She wasn't called on.
We will have another public comment section coming up. I'm pretty sure Mr. Wheeler will get to her at that point. Mr. Mendez, what were you saying again?
Yeah, I was just pointing out that, that item 9 and that this whole issue will be addressed again later. And that if we can finish the business of the board, and then we'll have time to continue to discuss the issue of public concerns related to the change in police leadership.
Very well. Did you want to go ahead and start the legislative recommendations discussion?
That would be my impulse. I mean, I don't want to cut anybody off, but I think.
Well, no, the public comment has concluded, and that is actually the next agenda item.
Very well. Okay. Yeah, the only thing that I can discuss right now, I know that there is and maybe Ashley can supplement what I had to say, is that I have floated the idea with council and with actually with the city attorney of proposing an amendment to Virginia Code 91600, which currently delegates authority that requires police above a certain size to have procedures for receiving complaints and promptly investigating complaints, and promptly addressing misconduct. My concern was that the current language in that statute gives that power only to the police. And if the police in Charlottesville or any other town set up procedures for receiving complaints, they could, in theory, just say, oh, our procedures don't allow for the civilian review or civilian oversight of complaints. And so I have put this in as made the suggestion to the city council that in our legislative package, we propose to re-examine 91600 and allow municipalities to delegate the responsibility for receiving and investigating complaints to oversight organizations that fulfill all the other procedural requirements in 91600. So that's where we are. I haven't gotten any response back from anyone in the city government yet.
Okay. No, I think that, I would be in support of that. And I don't know if you were soliciting discussion beyond that, or just that was informational.
That was informational. I'll be pursuing that with the city attorney and the city manager going forward.
Okay, very well. So I believe the next item on the agenda is going to be the operating procedures discussion or review.
I guess that's me again. There is in the package, the package for this meeting, which was circulated to the public and outlined right at the end after the minutes of a sort of densely annotated outline of the provisions that we need to have in our operating procedures in order to implement the powers that we want to have in the ordinance to receive complaints, to investigate, to make disciplinary recommendations, and so on, to be able to exercise our subpoena power, and to hold hearings and so forth. This again is for discussion. I had hoped by this time to have received input. I've also sent it to selected, some members of the work group, and I've shared it with members of the city council. And the results, the events of the last couple of weeks have kind of put it on the back burner and made people very reluctant to respond. We were hoping to have 2-on-2 meetings or with members of the council to work through the operating procedures, because we have to work through the operating procedures to some extent before they vote on the ordinance. And we wanted to have the ducks pretty much in a row by mid-October, when we're presumably going to have a work session with the city council as a whole. One thing that I have to agree that what has happened over the last week and a half has been a tremendous distraction, and I would urge, please, the folks that have been active and constructive on putting together the ordinance. You guys speak for the oppressed and the disenfranchised. You're their spokespeople, and I would urge you to, not lose faith in the process and come back and participate in the development of these operating procedures, because time and time again, when we were working on the ordinance, you guys had a whole lot of good ideas. And so I kind of missed that. There's no, it's very difficult to go forward without the support of the public, and we need you back. That's all I have to say at this point.
Yeah, Bill, that's very true. And I support what you say about needing the support of the public back. But right now, as we've heard through some of the comments, and hopefully we'll get some more here in the next comment sessions, that's going to be a long road to hoe.
It's a long road to hoe. And I'm, again, as people have frequently reminded me, I haven't been in Charlottesville all that long. And so I don't see all of the, some of the concerns take me by surprise. Some of the connections are not immediately obvious to me, that no matter what we feel about the chair or the board, we still need a good ordinance. We still need a good, set of operating procedures. And so, that I think it's totally, totally legitimate to express concern and even outrage. But let's keep our eye on the prize.
Well, are there any other comments with regard to the operating procedures template that Mr. Mendez has laid out? Okay, seeing as none, Mr. Wheeler, I believe that we are at the next public comment section.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll go first to Joy Johnson, but if you'd like to get in line, please click the raise hand icon in the Zoom webinar. Joy, you're on with the PCRB, and if you unmute, you've got 3 minutes.
Sure, good evening. My name is Joy Johnson. I am a public housing resident, and I'm also an African-American woman. There is one thing that I have learned through Joe Sakos, through dismantling racism, is to understand who have power. And white men has power, and it's white women, and it's Black men. And then with Black women, we have to fight all three just to be heard. The reason I'm pointing that out is that the person of the PBA who spoke at the city council meeting that it seems like you all are in support with, trash the mayor, which was so disgusting on Tuesday night that our neighborhood just feels like now we can't trust anybody. Whatever trust was there has been broken down. This thing about equity, race, this thing about collaboration and all of this stuff. It's a rippling effect. It is a rippling effect. And what happened with what the community saw or think or assumed that happened, this gentleman stood to sit in city council chambers and basically trash the mayor, an African-American woman who is in leadership, regardless of whether you like her or not. And now one white person came to her aid. This is why I said what I said before. I also understand about gatekeepers. I also understand about gatekeepers. Well, Joy Johnson, what you see is what you get. Nakaya Walker, what you see is what you get. She doesn't hide anything, and she really digs down to get the truth. I just want to say that the actions of Mr. Brown or whoever else, and if I'm wrong, Mr. Brown, I will apologize to you, send a rippling effect that has this whole community upside down. So Mr. Mendez, when you said you hope we will come back to the table, a whole lot got to change, boo, because people ain't trusting none of you right now. None of you. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got 4 additional hands up now. Brandon Collins, you're on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
Good evening, PCRB. My name is Brandon Collins. I am a lifelong resident of Charlottesville. When the idea of Civilian Review Board was first brought up, I and a lot of the folks I work with and some partners were enthusiastic, frustrated by some of the limitations in state law, but enthusiastic that we could have a police department that was responsible to the civilians. It's our understanding that such a board of reviewers would also be responsible to the civilians and the community. And all things aside, just watching this meeting, the contempt I've seen from the chair for community comment, community input, even input of members of this review board, it's unfathomable. This is not a community-based board. This is not doing the will of the public. I'm not even sure you're doing the will of the council either. And I think as a review board, you need to think about that and need to think about the leadership of this board. This city is now in turmoil. There is no faith in city government. There's no faith in this review board. And it's a real shame because there was hope that this could make a difference in this community. And right now it seems to be going down in flames, and it's highly disappointing. And I think tonight you should all hear from Chairman Brown about what actions he has taken in relationship to the firing of Chief Brackney. Whether or not he thinks that was done under the guise of the PCRB, I think in full transparency and out of response to the community, a full accounting needs to be made. If that can't be done, I think this board should call for Mr. Brown to resign. Mr. Brown, you should resign. If you don't, I think that this board really needs to consider taking a vote of no confidence and beginning the steps for some kind of removal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Kate Fraley. Kate, you're on with the PCRB and you've got 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi. So first of all, I want to congratulate you all, and especially Bill Mendez. I couldn't do it at your last meeting because there was such an upsetting event at the end. But you all did a fantastic job. The people in the community that assisted in that working group, you all persevered, you went straight ahead, and you got an ordinance done. And we didn't get a really opportunity to congratulate you and praise you and thank you for doing that. So Bill, I want to tell you that especially. So this all is very, very upsetting because we have lost the prize. The prize was in your hand and it's no longer there. I'm hoping, like Bill hopes, that movement can be made forward, but it's definitely been delayed. And I hope it's not been delayed until the next members of City Council are elected. So that's one thing. The second thing is about trust. So I'm not positive that the PCRB ever really fully developed the trust of the community. And the reason I'm not sure is because we don't have data. So Mr. Brown, I've asked many, many, many times when you do your report about complaints, I've asked you to clarify which of those complaints arrived at the PCRB directly and which were transferred from the CPD. That would show how much trust the PCRB has in the community. I think you answered one time, or the one time I asked in the next meeting, you said, and it wasn't very many. So I'm asking today, of those, was it 19 complaints? How many came in directly to the PCRB and how many came from the CPD? And of the 4 recent ones, how many came directly to the PCRB and how many came from the police department? Because if nobody in the community is making complaints directly, or if they're few, this will be a measure of trust. So if there were a lot of them that came from the community and over the next few months it drops off, that'll be a repercussion and there'll be evidence, but we don't have that data. You have it, but we don't have it. So I would appreciate that being in the report from now on. And if you have that information right now, I'd be happy to have it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Sarah Burke. Sarah, you're on with the PCRB. Go ahead.
Hey, everybody. I was just thinking about this while this conversation was going on. I was thinking about how when I was on the initial CRB, I think I researched hundreds of boards around the country. And CRBs are generally not effective. They're often seen as tools for the police department. They maybe 95% of the time side with the police officer over the complainant. And that's the broader history beyond just Charlottesville's history with civilian review boards. And so when we built the civilian review board sort of from scratch, I say we as just one of the initial members, but it was really pioneered by the community. But we created something that transferred some power from police about police misconduct out of the police department and into the hands of the people. And that's supposed to be what this board stands for. And y'all are not doing that. I heard Bill say that he misses the support of the public, specifically the people who participated in drafting the ordinance. I was one of those people, and I hear what Bill's saying. I really do. I've been working for more than 4 years, first as a CRB member, then advocating for change on a state level, and then assisting the work that you all have done. But I agree that I'm not sure you have ever really established trust with the public, nor shown respect for the public, nor prioritized public comment, nor had an open conversation with the public where you've ever answered public comment. And I'm paying attention to that. So in my opinion, you will get public support back if and when you acknowledge where you've gone wrong. That's just simple. I'm teaching my 5-year-old this, and I'm teaching my 3-year-old this. Asking people to take their very valuable time to assist you when we cannot be sure that we trust you, and when you have not acknowledged any of the process or statements or behind the scenes stuff that y'all have done is wrong for you to do. And you're asking too much. And I want to say that staying silent about it is also doing wrong. Staying silent is doing wrong when people are asking you for an answer. So we are all waiting to see whether you respond to any of us in a meaningful and honest way. And I mean every single one of you on the board. I want to hear from each one of you. And I am sorry that people have felt bullied. I'm sorry that people have felt harmed by these conversations that have occurred, both privately and publicly. I don't think that was the intention of anybody, but I think that categorizing that way is also a harmful way to do it, when all anybody's ever tried to do is create meaningful police accountability in this community. Nobody's trying to hurt anybody's feelings. Good night.
Mr. Wheeler, before you continue with that, I just want to make clear this decision regarding the chief of police rests solely in the hand of the city manager. He had his own body of evidence for which he made that decision. We did not make that decision. We didn't have any control over that decision, and we weren't part of that decision. So the misconception that somehow we pulled the trigger or we did X, Y, Z, that's completely wrong. So you want us to give you answers over something that we don't have and we're never going to have. So I believe it was correct that your questions were centered towards council and where the city manager was, because that's where the decision resided. But here you want us to give answers that we don't even have.
Chair Brown, when you say we, are you including the board as a whole, or are you speaking in reference to the personal statement you made as a personal civilian August 12th? Just want to kind of clarify that, where your boundary is on the use of that word we, just kind of, because that's important to me.
Ms. Carpenter, we're going to get there. However, I just said with regard to the
No, I
termination.
asked you a direct question and I just want to know where the we is. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I just want to ask that question because the people are asking for comments back, and I'll step back, but that's a question I will wait until the next section of the agenda. Thank you.
Do you happen to have the answer for why the city manager terminated the chief of police? If you don't, then the we would include you, because none of us have that answer. Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next up is Katrina Turner. Katrina, you're back on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
I just want to say, if you all are truly serious about this board, you all would ask Chairman Brown to resign. With Chairman Brown on this board, you all have lost your support. Is his presence on this board really worth the community and what the community has gone through? Many of us, as Ms. Burke said, spoke on the Senate floor to get these laws changed so the citizens will finally be able to get that justice we have been fighting so hard for. Okay? Many of us spoke on that Senate floor. And that law passed the first time, the very first time. And who got credit for it? Charlottesville. Charlottesville's initial CRB got credit for helping pass that bill. Y'all, we didn't do all this work. We did not do all of this work to have it tarnished in this way. And you all right now may not think that what Chairman Brown has done has devastated this community. But you go out into the community and you see what he has done. How many people tonight has told you what Chairman Brown has done? You all are not going to get anything done with him on this board. And I'm just asking. And as Chairman Brown said, all the volunteer work he did, everything I do is volunteer. Even down to the point of getting threatened by the former Commonwealth attorney to put me in jail. Okay? Everything. So you all need to think about this community and not about one member. And I need to also know who the 4 core members of the PCRB is. I really and truly need to know that. And we really need to know who Chairman Brown thinks are the only 4 members on this board who have done work on this board, because evidently 4 are core, 2 or not. We need answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Louisa Jeanette. Louisa, you're on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm a resident of Charlottesville. My name is Louisa Candelaria. And I'm just coming into this meeting to amplify the voices of the people that spoke before me. I agree that Bellamy Brown should be removed from the PCRB. His actions and his comments on Facebook and his everything that he's done that has sort of led up to what's happened this past week sort of takes a lot away from the accountability, the credibility of the PCRB. I don't see how community members can trust the PCRB, who are supposed to be investigating complaints against the police. I don't see how the community can trust this board when the board aligns with the same officers who have complaints against them, or whatever, the same with officers. I think that this board is supposed to be for the community, and from what I understand, also I can't understand why there's no transparency, why someone on a board would be doing investigative work for a year that he wasn't given information to the rest of the board about.
And we either lost her or she stopped, but had 1 minute and a half left. See if she raises her hand again. Harold Foley, you're back on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
So thank you so much. I'm gonna be short. This is gonna be real short. It's never of the fight was about Chief Brackney getting fired. The fight is about how y'all align yourself with PBA. I'm gonna say this again. PBA didn't want oversight. They never want oversight. They never want someone telling them what to do with their officers. And Mr. Brown, I hope you can get that. It's not about, we don't want to know about the chief getting fired. We want to know why you use this platform to speak about PBA. You spoke PBA out your mouth. And I think that's the real thing that folks are really confused about. Like, are you on the board for the civilians? Or are you on the board for the PBA? Because you can't do both. You can't straddle the fence. And it's the thing, I would like to know how many board members knew that you was going to do that statement. You know, so this is the deal. Knew you was going to do that statement, that's okay. But if it would have been rather done if you had done it in your own personal time somewhere else. So the optics of it is you the chair, you decided to do this right after a board meeting. So that's the problem that we have. It's not about the chief. It's about PBA. 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 That's what it's about. PBA don't want this board. And I'm gonna say this again. Y'all played right into their hands. They used you, Mr. Brown, as a pawn. Thank you, and y'all have a good night.
Thank you. We've got 2 new hands raised. Ange Khan, you're back on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
Yes, I've been listening to the conversation, and y'all seem to be talking over Nancy, which is very disappointing. And it's really just unbelievable. Allow folks to speak. There are answers that need to be, there are questions that need to be answered, right? And then I do want to reiterate that Bellamy Brown should step down. I'm going to read you a quote from his Facebook page, and I quote, "Some of these folks in Charlottesville sound like the boy who cried wolf with calling everything racism. Oh, I dropped my ice cream. Racism with the rolling eye emoji." That's your chair. For the Police Civilian Review Board, that's your chair. Who is out here making all of these comments, that's your chair. It's just unbelievable to me. That's your chair. So if your chair is sitting here saying, "Oh, everything is not about racism," that is what? That you're supposed to be investigating this. This is what y'all's job is, to investigate these complaints of police brutality, racism, all of these things. And that's your chair. Some of these folks in Charlottesville sound like the boy who cried wolf when calling everything racism. That's your chair. Y'all have a lot to think about. And I'm done. Thank you.
Next up is Jeff Vogel. Jeff, you're on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Brian. I just want to share with you some conduct of your chair, Mr. Brown, which reflects badly on the board and actually demeans the board. Mr. Brown and I had a contentious conversation on the phone. Thereafter, we traded barbs and insults on Facebook. And then he informed me what a bad job I was doing representing LaQuinn Gilmore. You all know I'm representing LaQuinn Gilmore, to the point where I shouldn't be representing him. And then he proceeded to communicate with Mr. Gilmore to tell him what a bad job I was doing representing him and urging him to get another lawyer. You think that's within the confine of the chairman of the board of this board? Is that appropriate? You people accept that as appropriate for him to have done? Do you do anything but stare back? I mean, can anybody say anything? I'm going to assume if you say nothing, because that's what we do in law, that you have nothing to say to dispute what I'm telling you.
Jeff, I would say it's not appropriate. Now that I can't imagine, I can't believe that you're relaying this kind of activity. I don't even know what to think about it. I have to process that.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, it's shocking to me. Nobody's ever done that. I mean, it is what the tort of, you have clients, Mr. Frazier, and you have clients, Mr. Watson. What if somebody went to your clients, told them a lie, and said, you should get rid of Watson, you should get rid of Frazier, and they lied in order to do that? You'd be pretty upset about it. And you would be too, Mr. Frazier, and appropriately so, because we expect to be treated with respect and not interfere with our business operations, aside from the fact, of course, that Mr. Bellamy knows very little about the law and is absolutely wrong in his thoughts that I'm misrepresenting Mr. Gilmore. And I'd be happy to debate that with him, and I've urged him to do that, but he has refused to do that. And he likes to hide behind anything he can hide behind so he doesn't have to actually address one-on-one and be confronted with the truth. And that raises serious questions about his conduct here in general and his attitude towards everyone. So I would urge you to join with me in asking Mr. Brown to resign, or the council or the board to urge his resignation, or the council to remove him, because that kind of conduct is just unacceptable.
And that particular one, Mr. Gilmore, LaQuinn Gilmore, is a friend of mine that I've grown up with since we were in elementary school. I've known him personally. I've lived in this community. I've grown up in this community for over 14 years. I have friends who are African Americans in this space who have been on the criminal side of things and not. I have friends in this community who have experienced policing here in Charlottesville. I've also worked in the legal community, and I know what it is to represent a client well. I know what it is to give the best advocacy possible to a client. One of the things that came to my attention is a quote regarding Mr. Gilmore's particular incident. Moving forward, Fogel says he's working to get justice for his client. The crux of the matter is that he was unlawfully detained, unlawfully searched, unlawfully handcuffed, and received serious injuries as a result. In our July 8th meeting, minutes reflected, Mr. Fogel shared his experiences concerning the functioning of CPD Internal Affairs Division. He stated that his client, LaQuinn Gilmore, was interviewed by IA with the assurance that a copy of the interview recording would be made available to him. Subsequently, the CPD refused to provide a copy, stating that the city attorney has not allowed it. He also stated that the CPD refused to identify the officers present during the incident and refused to hold a lineup or allow Mr. Gilmore to look at photographs to identify the officers. He was not allowed to see body camera footage of the incident, but the footage was later released by the chief of police and used to refute his claims of property damages. Mr. Fogel stated that the IA process was very unwelcoming and hard on complainants. From this appearance, there appears to be a 180 that is of concern to me. One, because Mr. Gilmore is, as I said, a friend of mine since Venable, but also because there is a hearing request before us. And Mr. Fogel may remember this conversation regarding his client there, that he didn't know where his client was, that his client's somewhere down the road. So for me personally, regarding that hearing request, I would like to speak to the client first to make sure that this is what he actually wants. So like this, and that is, I mean, that is before the board. So when you talk about, I don't know about representation and all these things, or I don't know about being part of this community or those things, that's absolutely incorrect. And I believe it's prudent that we speak to the person who had the negative encounter with police before we actually move forward with the actual request.
Thank you, Chair Brown, for that explanation, but I hope we all realize that Ms. Gilmore is a member of our board. I don't want to put her on the spot, but I want to give her some space if she would like, if she would like to say anything about the use of her son in reference to what's going on right now on this board. I don't know if she does, but I think all of us would be respectful if we opened up some space. So could we, do that for her right now? Because we are talking about family member of one of our board members, correct, Chair Brown? We may have a hearing coming up at some point before the end of the year, but I think all this conversation back and forth about what's going on is very uncomfortable to me, and that's not even my family member. And I would like to open up space, and if Ms. Gilmore doesn't want to, that would be fine. But I think this is going somewhere where we don't need to go.
I concur with that.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, really what I want to talk about And what I have to say this evening is I heard all of y'all. And as a citizen of Charlottesville, I wouldn't trust this board either. I think it's a shame, and it's very hurtful, you know, as I sat here and I listened. But I think it's a shame what happened, and I hear all of y'all, and I know, you know, you said that we need to focus on the PBA, but I think it's through the PBA that we lost the chief. And my take on all of this is that the reason they got rid of her is because there's never been any accountability in this city, this beautiful, ugly city of Charlottesville. I know from my experience, I've filed complaints against police officers in this community, and there was never, ever a finding where they did anything wrong. And I think with Chief Brackney firing those officers for what they did to my son, because they did mess my son up. They messed him up. And I think with her firing those officers, that was the get back. Like, how dare this Black woman come in here and disrupt the system that's been put in place for hundreds of years? Because this passed down. This ain't nothing new. And I think it's a sin and a shame that this board is in place and everything that everybody else put together before we even got to this board is unraveling. And it's really, really hurtful because you have so many people in this community that think that they know what's best for brown and Black people. You don't have no idea what it's like to be stopped by a police officer. You don't have no idea what it's like to be manhandled by a police officer. You have no idea what it's like to have a police officer put a gun in your face like they did my son. He was minding his own business. You have no idea what it's like to know and watch your brother being brutalized by this police department. You have no idea. So for all of those people that think it was fine, no, I never got to know the chief personally, but I think it's a shame how y'all did her. And I do think it's through this organization that y'all talking about. Allegedly, that's what I come to understand. What needs to happen is we have to build the trust back up. But if it's going to take another 2, 3, 4 years, I'm gone. Because I sat on this phone very patiently and I listened to everybody and what they have to say, all of that complaint. And yes, it's hurtful. It's so hurtful because we as brown and Black people in this town, we are suffering. We're still suffering. We've been suffering for a long time at the hands of the police. And the police don't think that there should be any accountability for their actions. They think they can do whatever they want to us, whenever they want to write unnecessary tickets and put it on our car, whenever they want to pull us over and slam us, whenever they want to put a gun in our face, whenever they want to strip search us on the street at night, making us take our clothes off, and I can go on and on. You have been brutalizing us, and I don't understand why people don't get that, but of course you wouldn't get it, because it's not happening to white people. It's happening to brown and Black people. My son is suffering to this day because of what they did to him. Thank God he recorded it, because if he had not recorded it, nothing never would have happened. So something needs to change. The system of racism needs to be broken down. And Joy was right in what she said. All of y'all, her, Katrina, every last one of y'all on here is right. This is all wrong. And we have to do things better than what we are doing.
Mr. Wheeler.
Thank you, Ms. Gilmore. I just wanted to interject that real quickly, that I appreciate her comments right now.
Of the 4 hands raised, we have 2 new hands in this section. First up is Don Gathers. Don, you've got 3 minutes.
Good evening again, everyone. I'm still hoping to get a answer and a response to my previous question about who Chairman Brown considered the 4 core members of the PCRB, and what members are, in essence, being discounted as being members. In regards to everything that we've heard tonight, and I hope that everyone's been paying attention, many folks that have spoken, for whatever reason, personally or professionally or whatever, didn't care for Chief Brackney. But they recognized the fact that what was done was improper. And Chairman Brown, you can't be surprised that if, just as folks are saying that you called for the chief's resignation or termination, the people are now in essence calling for you to do the same. The essence of what this board was formed for and the work that needs to be done by the CRB is the exact opposite of what the PBA is in place for. So any recommendations that they come with, I would think that would give you all cause and pause to go running the other way, because they are going to do any and everything necessary and possible to support their officers, in many instances, rightly or wrongly. That's the antithesis of what this board is. You should be there to deal with issues of misconduct, findings of misconduct, and complaints that are brought forth against officers. And apparently Chief Brackney was doing the work of weeding or doing the anti-racist work. Again, many in the community didn't care for some of the other things that she may have done or said, but in that regard, where she was dealing with officers directly, that's exactly what the CRB should want and hope and expect that she would do. So I am just truly prayerful that the community has been heard tonight, that there's some individual reflection that'll be going on and taking place now and in the future. And again, I'd wait for a response to my question that also was echoed by Ms. Turner a little while ago. So thank you all very much.
Next hand up is the initials PC. I believe the last name might be Calvert. If you could introduce yourself to the PCRB.
Good evening. This is Pat Calvert, city resident, and I appreciate your time and the work that this board has undertaken and continued. I also respect many of the comments of folks who have spoken earlier, expressing their deep concern about ensuring the credibility and the continuing positive work of the goals and tasks to this board. To that end, it's clear, whether right or wrong, that there is concern about the public and the faith in this board, and several folks have also suggested a path forward in how to restore that. So I'm going to come in well under my 3 minutes, but it's a question that I think it's been posed, and I would love to hear responses. It might just end this discussion right now, and we can start moving on if Mr. Brown is willing to respond to the request. Is he willing to resign his position? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the next 2 hands, Kate Fraley and Jeff Fogel, have both spoken previously in this section.
I mean, we're essentially in the discussion at this point, so we can continue with public comment.
Would you like them to speak again? Is that what you're saying?
Sure. Yes, that's fine.
Kate Fraley, you're back on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
So I wrote and said that we don't know all the information, and we won't ever know all the information. But I think there's some information you can get. One of the difficulties is that the chair of the PCRB took information from an organization that really you all shouldn't be supporting. And if you want to see, Michael Wells spoke at the city council meeting, at the last city council meeting. And if you look up, if you didn't see it all, if you look it up, he spoke at our 3-minute 14, and you will know why everyone is even more upset now than they were before. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Fogel, you're back on with the PCRB. Go ahead.
Thank you, Brian. I actually have a request to make of the board. And the request is that you direct that Mr. Brown have nothing to do with any of the cases that I'm involved with. You can sense his palpable fury at me. He's expressed it to me on the phone. He's done it by way of email, and his attempt to interfere in my relationship with the client shows it as well. But of course, he never answered the question that was raised by it. What he did was say he wants to attack me about the hearing that I have pending before this board for the last year. And what should be disturbing to you is the lack of understanding of what the function of the board is. I filed this complaint. The focus of internal affairs and of this board is of the conduct of police officers. You have no ability to give a remedy to somebody who's a victim of abuse of police. That's the work that I do. I go to court and I get them money. That's the remedy that they can get. The remedy of what happens to the police officer does nothing for the victim. It may give everybody a sense of justice, but it doesn't do it for the victim. And so the focus of all of these efforts is on the conduct of the police officer. And so the police department for many, many years has allowed complaints by anybody who has observed or has reason to believe that misconduct occurred, and they will consider their evidence. And that's precisely what I did based on what I had seen in videotapes and what I had been able to learn from people who were near there. Mr. Brown seems to think that unless the gentleman who was the victim of this police abuse, in my opinion anyway, unless he wants to proceed with it, well, it's got nothing to do with a remedy for him. The focus here is and has to be, was the conduct of the officer wrong? Not whether or not it's appropriate for who represents anybody. I don't represent this gentleman. But I did take up his cause and I did speak to him, and he was encouraging me to do so. And I took up his cause because what I observed in the videotape was wrong. And now what I've seen of the last videotape, which was hidden from me by the police department, has now been shown to me. And it supports my position substantially. So I'm look forward to the hearing. I hope you all remember 8 or 9 months ago when Mr. Bellamy called me and asked me if I would agree to defer the hearing until July. And I said, no, I think we should go ahead with the hearing. How am I doing on that score? Not too well. It's now a year later, not July. And of course, I never got a phone call back from him about that or anybody else. And I've got a hearing pending before you all. When are you planning to hear it? But that's not really what I wanted to talk about. I am asking you to recuse Mr. Brown from anything have to do with any of my cases because he has shown his hostility and bias.
Okay, we have 3 hands raised at the moment. Sarah Burke, you're on with the PCRB. Go ahead.
I wanted to follow up on when Jeff said that Bellamy had told him that he thought that he should stop representing his client, and that Jeff said that then he spoke to Jeff's client. I'm wondering if that client, who is LaQuinn Gilmore, and I was really grateful to hear from Miss Gilmore on the call tonight. I'm wondering if that client could still file an appeal to the board. Some of the complaints that he made were sustained and some were not. Now you have your chairman who has talked to a complainant about trying to get his legal representative gone. Meanwhile, do you know who the PBA are? They are who represent the police officers in these types of hearings. That is who this board has sided with, and has actively tried to keep complainants' attorneys from being involved in their cases. Like, if you all don't see that, I don't know how else to explain to you that it is an inappropriate thing for a chairman, regardless of his friendship, which I empathize with. That must be a very challenging position for him to be in. But to tell that person that who might have an appeal pending to you that he should get rid of his lawyer, while then in the same week possibly siding with the PBA on their survey, which by the way said they didn't want you around. Like, I don't understand how people think that this issue is that anybody is asking you why the police chief was fired. We are asking you why you did a back behind the doors, shoddy investigation, and you said, we can't answer the question about why the police chief got fired. That question is for the city manager and for city council. But Mr. Brown, you posted on Facebook after Mayor Walker wrote that white supremacy did this. You wrote, to be clear, white supremacy didn't start this, I did. What exactly did you start? The firing of the police chief? You said on Jerry Miller that you believed that all leadership should be held accountable, but you weren't sure what happened to that captain that most of the city police officers were complaining about. Yet, after Mayor Nakia Walker said that she would not run for office anymore, you wrote, it is finished. What exactly is finished? Your war against these two women? And you also wrote, you can't be like, hold the police accountable. No, not that one. That's not how it works. Nobody is asking you not to hold the police accountable. We are all here on a Thursday night at 8:20 to ask you to hold the police accountable, but not to do it in this way that you're doing it, which is without due process, delegitimizing the entire CRB and undoing all the work that we've been doing and causing mistrust with the public. I don't understand why you all keep turning our questions around into something that they're not.
Thank you. Katrina Turner, you're on with the PCRB. You've got 3 minutes.
I'd just like to know that with the chairman of the board working with the police for over a year, those are his words, all the complaints that the CRB has gotten, how has the verdict come? You know, was Mr. Brown part of the verdict? You know, did it go in the police favor? You know, because it's just so disturbing that he is in charge of deciding on these cases. You know, and the sympathy he has for the police, you know that. You know, how were these complaints rendered? Were they, I mean, you know, did any of the clients get the justice they were looking for when they came to the CRB? Or did the complaints, were the complaints the same as what the police department said? Because I really think that needs to be looked into. I don't know if any of you on the board have thought about that, but I would really like to know how many of those complaints have went for the citizens. Now knowing everything that your chairman has been cooperating with the police for over a year. How have those complaints went? Y'all have a whole lot to think about here tonight. You know, because the people who came to you with these complaints, they put their life in your hands. And believe me, I know. Like I said, I'm not for the chief because I got complaints on her myself. But what what Chairman Brown did and how he did it in the fight, and to use PCRB time to do this, you all truly need to think about who means more to you all. Is it the citizens who have endured so much? And believe me, I've been fighting the police department for over 5 years, and I'm not finished fighting. But the thing is, what Chairman Brown did opened up the police department's eyes. Okay, now I get my chance at justice, okay? I finally get some meetings also, okay? So you all need to think, are the police more important? Is Bellamy Brown more important? Or are the people more important? Thank you.
I just like to correct one misconception. One, we have not heard any cases or adjudicated any cases at all at this point. So there's no police favor or there's no citizen favor because we haven't heard any cases. So that's incorrect. Dr. Frazier.
No, I just wanted to remind folks that we haven't had an ordinance with real teeth in it, and there's one now pending before council, and I would just ask everyone to get behind that. We haven't had an executive director. We now will have that as of the 27th of this month, and that will also help us really begin to adjudicate these cases. But we've really not had any authority to do much with these cases at all so far. So I just want to remind folks to please let council know that this ordinance needs to be accepted as written because it has teeth, it has clout, it allows us to begin to do the job of addressing over-policing and excessive policing in the Black and brown community. So I just wanted to clarify that because there's an implication that we should be doing more than we have, and we haven't really had the authority to do that.
Okay. Are we moving into item 11 now, Chair Brown?
That's all kind of been merged together.
Okay, then I'd like to take my time because I did not comment on anything August 12th. And like you said earlier in this meeting, it was an email that you agreed with to put an item on our agenda regarding any comment or discussion, certainly from the public comment that we have heard, very deep, passionate comments regarding, the thoughts of what a civilian oversight board is. And if I may, I'd like to first, into the public minutes, read the People's Coalition statement in response to Bellamy Brown's statement at PCRB meeting on Thursday, August 12th. And they write as follows. The statement is in response to Bellamy Brown's statement at the Police Citizen Review Board, hereafter known as PCRB, on Thursday, August 12, 2021. Mr. Brown's prepared statement was in regard to what he termed a lack of leadership at the Charlottesville Police Department, which will be referred as the CPD. The PCRB did not review his statement. He used the public platform and his position as the chair to state his personal beliefs about leadership programs at the CPD. This was both inappropriate and an unethical use of the trust that the community had vested in the PCRB. We denounced Mr. Brown's special statement on August 12th about the treatment of the police by department management made on the anniversary of the Unite the Right rally, where the police stood by while white supremacists harmed local activists. The People's Coalition calls on City Council to remove Mr. Bellamy Brown from the PCRB. And they go on. The People's Coalition has been fighting for robust oversight of the Charlottesville Police Department for years, and more recently has been working with some members of the current PCRB for the last several months to draft an ordinance that ensures Charlottesville has a strong oversight board that can oversee and transform the police department's power over community members. And I think Dr. Frazier has urged the community to tell council to support that work that's been done. That's my comment. As chairman of the PCRB, Bellamy Brown has a responsibility to ensure that the PCRB stays focused on the police department being transparent about and accountable for its actions towards community members. His personal beliefs, unvetted and unapproved by the community or the board, must not be voiced while using his position as the chair of the PCRB. Effective civilian oversight of law enforcement is built on a trusting relationship with the people most impacted by policing. Without a trusting relationship, no one files complaints, even though there clearly continues to be issues. The fledgling PCRB needs the community's trust to be effective. Mr. Brown has done harm to the PCRB by, one, not letting the public or his fellow board members know he was looking into police morale, and two, becoming a talking head for the Police Benevolent Association, hereinafter known as PBA, in its complaints about low police officer morale. A board that is advocating for transparency must itself be transparent. Mr. Brown expended tremendous energy voicing his personal opinions in support of CPD line officers while neglecting his duties toward the folks who are most affected by police misconduct. The PCRB has had access to, and the CPD has even held press conferences about numerous civilian complaints about police misconduct over the past year. And Mr. Brown was using his authority as the PCRB chair to voice concerns. He should have done so on behalf of the people who had been victims of police misconduct. The creation of the PCRB was to stop police misconduct and hold police accountable, not to help the PBA challenge a chief of police. Dr. Rochelle Brackney, who may have been trying to change a problematic culture within CPD. Dr. Brackney has now been terminated from the police department as a result of Mr. Brown's statement. While the chief was not particularly in favor of community oversight, the city's firing her for trying to change police culture is a step in the wrong direction. The People's Coalition firmly believes that the community needs leaders in the city who will push for change in the problematic culture of CPD. Like many decisions that affect us, Dr. Brackney's termination happened behind closed doors without any transparency. In effectuating the departure of Dr. Brackney, the PCRB chair became a voice for the PBA, which wants the culture of policing to remain unchanged and is against the formation of a strong PCRB. That is clear from the PBA survey that Mr. Brown discussed on August 12th. A paltry 11.3% of officer respondents said that they believe a well-run PCRB working in concert with internal affairs would improve the current administrative process. However, 82.3% believe that if they are accused of violating policy, they will not receive a fair administrative process under the CPD's current internal investigative process. 90.2% of respondents claim to fear being targeted by community groups. Yet the chair publicly supported the officers who do not want community oversight or positive cultural change. The meeting on August 12th also included the PCRB's unanimous vote on an ordinance that will strengthen the ability to hold the police accountable. This ordinance was the result of the board's collaboration with members of impacted communities and other community members. At a time when this achievement should have been celebrated and highlighted, Mr. Brown muddled the waters by voicing police officer complaints rather than discussing systemic problems in Charlottesville policing or the trends of police behavior seen from complaints filed by community members. He gave up the opportunity to highlight to City Council why this ordinance is so sorely needed. We hope that Mr. Brown's actions and lack of objectivity do not undo the work that many of us here have been doing for many years. We encourage the PCRB to make a public statement and have a public discussion about Mr. Brown's August 12th statement. And we sincerely hope that his actions have not discouraged the City Council from voting to support the PCRB's drafted ordinance. One person's actions should not have the potential to unravel years of hard work. And I think we've seen portions of this statement used this evening with some of the comment. Now, I'd also like, prior to seeing this, I will share with board members an email that I sent to City Council and to the city manager and to the assistant managers and to Mr. Wheeler and to Ms. Thomas. I wrote on September 3rd, which was Friday, about a week ago. Good afternoon. After the events that have transpired from the last board meeting on August 12, 2021 until today, it has become abundantly clear to me, and I'm speaking just for me as a member of this board, just for me, that Chair Brown is not embodying the purpose of the Charlottesville Police Civilian Review Board. To refresh your memory, the bylaws state that our purpose is, quote, to provide objective and independent civilian-led oversight of the Charlottesville Police Department in an effort to enhance transparency and trust, to promote fair and effective policing, and to protect the civil and constitutional rights of the people of the city of Charlottesville, end quote. He has not been transparent with all members of the board regarding his year-long secret information gathering operation in order to participate in an action to have the police chief, Dr. Brackney, terminated from the position. Even today, September 3rd, 2021, he is identified by the Jerry Miller Show as the chair of the PCRB, which gives the impression that the board somehow endorses or supports his statements. This is a misfeasance of the duty of care he committed to when he accepted the appointment to this board. Expressing his opinion is a legal act, absolutely a legal act. Though by doing this at a board meeting, he has done great harm. The harm has been to the ability of the board to now act in a way that is transparent. Parentheses, does a shadow board exist? In parentheses, to empower us to act in a culture of mutual respect, impairing community engagement when we are seen as amplifying voices of officers who do not like their leadership, instead of the voices of those who have been disenfranchised in so many areas. Common ground will be difficult to establish with all stakeholders now, and public purpose is affected by this. How can the board be seen as serious in championing, quote, just, equitable, and legitimate policing policies, end quote, when two other additional board members support this misfeasance, and in bylaws Article 2, Item G, the board has been delegitimized from ever being seen as effective in execution of these objectives as long as Chair Brown remains on the board. The open gloating that has been done since Dr. Brackney has been removed is nauseating. Quote, winter is coming, quote, end quote. Really? A Game of Thrones reference to war? Why? Quote, white supremacy didn't do this, I did this, end quote. That is so confusing. I am open to discuss this with any council member, respectfully, Nancy Carpenter. And to date, no one has, contacted me about my email, which, is fine. And I do think that there are community members who have identified some pathways forward to bring this board back into a sense of legitimacy and trust. And also that not only can community members who are affected by bad policing, but even the police who are brought forward to these hearings can expect due process within the four corners of the ordinance as it now exists, or hopefully in the ordinance that the city council will adopt subsequent to our workshop on October 26th. And thank you for letting me have this time to make this comment. I appreciate it.
Mr. Mendez, do you have anything that you would like to say?
Yeah, with my usual reservations. Just to clarify and to reiterate that, in response to Ms. Carpenter, the statement was clearly labeled as being Mr. Brown's alone. He disclaimed any knowledge, he did not say that it was policy of the board, and nonetheless, he used that pulpit, and I understand where people could find that to be a problem. Being chair of the CRB is difficult and thankless. And I think that's especially true in Charlottesville with so many complex political and social currents flowing back and forth. I'd like to make a number of things clear. I don't believe that Mr. Bellamy is somehow in cahoots or in cooperation with the PBA. Gathering data on police attitudes is not a crime. He didn't get Chief Brackney fired. On the other hand, I do think that he made an unwise statement during the CRB meeting, which has resulted in a lot of foreseeable problems for the board. That he has also made divisive remarks regarding the board itself. I assume he thinks I'm a core member. I don't know what that means, and I don't want to know. He's taken confrontational social media stances. And I think what is probably worst of all is his interference in a complainant's relationship with his legal representative. Now, I think it would be a tragedy to have the city council interfere and remove Mr. Bellamy. They're the only people that have the authority to do so. It would set a terrible precedent of political interference and have a tremendous chilling effect. But I have come to the conclusion that reluctantly I must make the following motion. The Charlottesville Civilian Review Board no longer has confidence in the desirability of Bellamy Brown continuing to serve as the chair of the CRB. Thank you.
For that motion,
are we acting on the motion right now?
is the motion up for discussion?
I would like it, yeah.
Ms. Gilmore, I see that you're, did you want to say something?
Given that the motion is up for discussion, given Mr. Mendez's statement, I guess it only prudent that I convey what took place fully in this process. In this process, I consulted with our legal counsel. I also consulted with Mr. Mendez, and I also, on August 12th at 2:46 p.m., consulted with Ms. Carpenter, and I also informed the other two members of the board. It was Mr. Mendez's suggestion that my statement be 500 to 750 words, and that particular line of while I'm currently chairman of the Civilian Review Board, the views in this statement are purely my own, was inserted by Mr. Mendez. So in light of that, I mean, you can have any discussion that you want, but this idea that I proceeded without board knowledge is absolutely incorrect. And I'm deeply disappointed, given that Mr. Mendez and I worked with counsel to present this, and that was his particular line. I'm deeply disappointed of what just took place.
And I do need to respond to that. I'm sorry, because this is getting, we are starting to argue about the facts and the timeline. I made repeated attempts to convince the chair that such a statement was not appropriate for a public meeting of the CRB. Only after it became clear that he was absolutely determined.
Hey, Bill, I don't mean to interrupt you, but since you made a motion, aren't we supposed to second it before we, or see if there's a second?
Well, I'm just, I think we're, So the idea that I'm somehow complicit in this,
I wasn't saying complicit. I was saying that throughout this process, you were there with counsel as this was taking shape. And to say, I mean, that's your particular line.
This is out of order. I'm sorry, gentlemen, but this is out of order. Mr. Mendez, this is out of order. Mr. Mendez put a motion before us that we recommend as a board your removal simply as the chair of the PCRB. And then, we need to have either the motion goes with the second or it dies. And if we have a second, then we can have all this discussion like you're having about the behind the scenes stuff or whatever, is going on. So I want to go back to Mr. Mendez's, motion that we need to act on before we can have discussion. I mean, that's the way it seems like it operates at other boards and commissions, that if you have a motion, it's either seconded or it dies. And if it's seconded, then you discuss it. If it dies, well, it dies. It doesn't go any further as a motion.
This would be a good time for you to second it, Nancy.
I'm going to second it.
Thank you.
Now we can have all the discussion we want. All right, back. I'm sorry, Ms. Chair Brown. Go ahead. We have a second, and then we can go ahead and finish up our discussion.
I've stated what I've needed to state.
Okay.
And I also want to modify something that Nancy said, and that is we have no authority to remove Mr. Brown from the board or from his office as chair. All we can do under our current bylaws is state we have no confidence. And that's all this does. And if that's what it takes to provoke a change in behavior, so be it.
Repeat that again. I got a lot of smoke coming out my ears at this point.
No, I'm sorry. It's just that we can't fire Bellamy either as chair, nor can we remove him from the board. All we can do is vote no confidence, and then leave it up to Mr. Brown as to how he wants to proceed. But I think there is more than adequate basis for a vote of no confidence.
The articles, Article 3, Section C, resignations, removals, and vacancies, say the board may request that the Charlottesville City Council remove a board member for misfeasance, malfeasance, or excessive absences from board meetings.
And I said specifically that I didn't want the council to intervene and remove you.
But that's what the bylaws state.
Yeah, and that's what I agree with. All this is a vote of no confidence, period. You're not, if it passes, you're not required to resign. You're not required to do anything. But we have just then spoken, the consensus of the board will be taken.
Is there so there's been a second. Ms. Robinson, would you poll the board? I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Mr. Brown?
So the motion is that there's no confidence. I don't know how to say this. Like, I'm fully confident in my capabilities and my dedication. So no confidence. Yes, I do have confidence in my ability to lead, and yeah.
Ms. Carpenter?
Vote for his own self. It just seems kind of weird, man.
Well, no, that's
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Seltzer.
I just so everybody's clear on what a vote means. I think a yes vote is in support of the motion.
That's what I was looking for.
Is in support of a vote of no confidence, and a no vote is in opposition to a vote of no confidence.
That's what I was looking for. So my answer would be no.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Carpenter?
Yes.
Ms. Gilmore? Ms. Gilmore? Okay, I'll come back to her. Dr. Frazier?
No.
Mr. Mendez?
Yes.
And Mr. Watson?
No.
Ms. Gilmore?
Brian, can you tell if she's having problem with that microphone again? Is she unmuted? Can you tell?
She's currently unmuted.
I don't want anything to progress until we get Ms. Gilmore's vote.
If you need my assistance, I could give her a call again.
I'm in favor of that, to reach out to her by phone. I got a message that apparently somebody heard her say that she needed a charger. So it could be that her, because we've been on, she's used on her phone for the last couple of hours, the battery could have expired and need to be recharged. So.
What happens in the event of a tie on this vote?
It doesn't pass.
It's kind of there's no teeth in the vote anyway, but it just shows that there's a tie, basically.
Yeah.
Well, James, don't you think it shows a lot more than that? That we need to do a lot of work with ourselves as a board?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
But I mean, it doesn't have any.
Yes, Mr. Seltzer.
Just to respond to Mr. Watson's question, I think if the vote is tied, the motion just does not carry.
So I'm going to try a second time. I did not get her on the initial try. Okay, so I got her voicemail again.
Okay. I mean, obviously, there she is.
Ms. Gilmore?
Ms. Gilmore, where did you leave off with your phone tech? Did you hear the motion that Mr. Mendez made?
Ms. Gilmore? I believe enough time has elapsed to consider that an abstention. Either way, if it's a tie, the motion still does not carry. We are already 21 past. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to say? Yes, Dr. Frazier.
I just wanted to, my understanding from the city manager's office and from members of council were that the lack of transparency on the decision about the termination of the chief was largely determined by deference to her right to privacy. It was an HR matter. I know that's, a blank canvas is difficult. Everybody wants to project their own reasoning onto that, their own theory as to why it was done. We don't know why. Council presumably knows, certainly the city manager knows, but I think out of respect for Dr. Brackney and deference to her right to privacy, that will remain unknown. And so we just need to keep that in mind in terms of all the speculation about who caused it, who did it, who was complicit. It was a decision made by the city manager based upon information that none of us are privy to. And I just want to make sure that that's clear for folks that don't know that this really comes down to her right to have that information kept confidential. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very well.
And one last thing, I think that we still, are the public, the firing of the chief aside, I think a lot of people that I heard tonight were asking, why was this investigation done? And until about 5:12 p.m. on August 12th, of course, I couldn't read your statement, Chair Brown, because I was having technical problems of my own that evening. So I didn't get a chance to look at it till the next day. And, I guess one of the questions, maybe moving forward that we can address, because didn't you say you were ongoing with this, that you still had some folks that you had in your pipeline to talk to, or have you, or is this thing all done?
I believe that there was a joint session at which point a council member had suggested that members of the board go out and get more input from other officers. That's been done. And apparently, you got folk that want to have differences of opinion of it. To inform my position, again, someone who's had a negative policing experience, someone who's had to fight for the better part of a year to get that rectified, someone who has, based on that experience, not had good feelings toward police officers, but also recognizing in this role that I have to be open to hearing what they have to say. You guys call it an investigation or whatever. These are conversations. I mean, you guys can have your own conversations, but this is I believe that we are at the point.
Well, I have one last comment. I just wanted to say that, I hope that, that there is, public comment that Chair Brown and Dr. Frazier both supported the firing. And I just wanted to make sure that that's in the public minutes as we adjourn for the evening.
Hey, real quick, suggestion. I think we should look at having a town hall at some point. People, brought up a lot of good points. Due to a lack of time, we're just sitting here and unable to really fully answer people's questions and give them the time that they deserve. And that's bothersome, right? Because I got to get up and go out into this community tomorrow, with eggshells coming my way. And I'm here I love everybody, man. I'm just trying to make the community better. That's why I'm here. That's the only reason I want to do this, right? And it really hurts to be part of something that you want to be positive, but there's this big negative cloud and energy evolving, or that is evolved. And so we definitely need to look at a true town hall, at least. Sucks it's got to be on Zoom, but something where we can engage with the people. So as they're explaining their side, there's a lot of things I learned. I didn't know a lot about the PBA, to be honest with you. I didn't, but we definitely have to be able to connect. Otherwise, we are worthless. If we're hearing the information, but we're unable to, digest it, learn more and move elevate the quality of life for people that have been suffering. And so a lot of times this ends up being this intellectual debate of a bunch of people on Zoom. And at the end of the day, nobody's being helped. So I think we should definitely look at a date and send out an email and try to at least, do some kind of a town hall, which we've never really done. I think the police did a town hall about a year or so ago, but we haven't done one. But set it up so that we can respond, right? Somebody asks you a question, you're not just sitting there with a blank stare on Zoom. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
And one closing thought, Mr. Chair, which is, again, I would plead for the community, all stakeholders, to get behind the ordinance. There's been a ton of work put into it. It's a good ordinance. It has teeth in it. And we need your support. We need council to hear from you about supporting the ordinance. Don't take away the authority that we need to do this job, as we welcome Mr. Aguilar to our community, to as executive director of our board. That's where we really all need to be putting our energy. And I really, really ask the community to get behind this, because it's too important. Thank you.
Okay, and we had one more public comment section, number 12.
If I can say, I'm sorry, Nancy, I don't mean to interrupt. Building on something that Mr. Watson said, I think we also need, as soon after Mr. Aguilar gets here as possible, we probably need some kind of retreat. You know, some kind of socially distanced, face-to-face meeting to get our heads straight, to define our mission, our responsibilities. And I think that needs to be done.
Agree.
And Mr. Chair, if I may say something, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Just in full transparency and disclosure to both the board and the members of the public that are viewing this meeting, I am personally not entirely sure whether or not Mr. Chair should have had a vote in that last motion. And unfortunately, the city's legal counsel isn't available for me to reference. Mm-hmm. And so I would like to put that information out there, and it's something that I can follow up on, as well as the board members, I'm sure, can follow up on tomorrow. But I felt it was pertinent to put that information out there.
No, that's
thank you, Ms. Robinson.
And that's quite all right. And we could subtract my vote, and it'll still be a 2-2.
Well, I don't really, I mean, can we really accept an abstention? Because is a technical difficulty a reason for an abstention, or is it just a technical difficulty and we need to get that vote? I mean, I think it's something as important as this. One of the, I mean, the ordinance and the work on that and all the conversation was very, very important. But this is also important too, because like Bill was talking about a retreat, James was talking about a town hall. I think to get her actual vote recorded is paramount in light of this information. I'm sorry, Ms. Robertson's not here, or Ms. Marshall.
Mr. Seltzer, did you have
something to say?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I don't have any reason to think that you were that it was not permissible for you to vote, but I'm glad to look into that question. I just don't know the answer.
Sure, absolutely. If you wouldn't mind looking into that as well. Obviously, there's a position that, some want to move forward. That being said, Ms. Carpenter, I stated earlier that the public comment and the PBA discussions had merged in together. It is now 9 p.m. Is there a motion for adjournment?
Make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Robinson, could you pull the board?
Yes, Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Ms. Carpenter. Ms. Carpenter.
You're muted.
Oh, sorry, no.
Okay, Dr. Frazier.
Yes.
Mr. Mendez.
Yes.
Mr. Watson.
James, did you?
Oh, I said yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Thanks.
I was gonna write it on a piece of paper.
And I don't. Is that?
Sorry, I did miss
Is
Miss
Ms. Gilmore
Gilmore.
still available? Or...
COVID has introduced new technical difficulties that didn't used to exist.
I think at this point, I mean, it's we do have at least 4, so we'll say that motion passes, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.